We will now call the business session of December 15th, 2020 to order at 6:17 p.m. I apologize for the delay tonight. On March 16, 2020, the governor suspended various provisions of the Open Meetings Act pursuant to a state of disaster authority. The change was effective on March 16, 2020 until further notice or until the state of disaster declaration expires. In accordance with physical distancing guidelines and while providing as much transparency as possible, this meeting will not be open to the public. This meeting is being broadcast at wccc.tv. The audio is being recorded. The video and audio recordings will be made available to the public. According to the governor and attorney general, statutes that may require face-to-face interaction between members of the public and public officials are suspended, provided, however, that the governmental body offers alternative methods of communications with their public officials. This includes public comment on agenda items. In an effort to allow for as much public input as possible, those who wish to speak or submit written comments on a listed agenda item or to register with the city secretary's office by 11 a.m. today. Individuals who register to speak on an agenda item must limit their comments to 3 minutes. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to speak on. And now we will say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is to consider the minutes of the December 1st, 2020 regular council meeting. Are there any corrections? There being no corrections, the minutes will stand approved as presented, and we will now move on to public hearing. I believe we have 4 public hearings tonight. The first is public hearing 2020-882. Are there any questions for staff?
I think Clint should be on here to do the staff presentation, or?
I'm here. Y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution approving the following subdivision plats. A preliminary plat of the Southern Heights Edition, ETJ, and preliminary plat of the Bodie Road Edition, ETJ. By a vote of 9-0, Plan Commission recommended that subdivision plats be approved.
Very good. Are there any questions for staff? Hearing none, we will open the public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
No, sir.
All right. Having no individuals to speak, is there a motion?
I'll move for approval. Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes?
Aye.
Palmer?
Aye.
Porterud?
Yes.
Bearfield?
Yes.
Sabido?
Yes.
Meek?
Yes.
Motion passes.
We will now move to public hearing 2020-883.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance abandoning a .11 acre alley located between Rusk Avenue and Tyler Street from Sherman Street to Preston Street, described as being a .11 acre tract of land in McLennan County, Texas, being a 20-foot wide alley, and block 17 in the Renix addition to the city of Waco is recorded in volume 28, page 502 of the deed records in McLennan County, Texas, and authorizing the city manager to execute quitclaim deeds, providing a severability clause, and finally determine at the meeting in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 9-1, the Plan Commission recommended approval of the abandonment, excluding the portion of the alley adjacent to lots A6 and C7, block 17 in the Rennick addition, and based on the following findings and conditions. The findings are the public use of the alley right-of-way is not required for proper flow or traffic or for emergency vehicle access to the area. That utility access for surrounding property is not adversely impacted by the abandonment of the right-of-way, and that the abandonment of the alley provides better development opportunities for adjacent properties. We do have 2 conditions as part of the recommendation, one being a 20-foot general utility easement must be retained for the area. The abandoned alley or all public utilities, including City of Waco and Encore facilities, must be relocated at the owner's expense. And the applicant must provide survey exhibits and field notes for all quitclaim deeds and easements associated with the abandonment.
Thank you, Clint. Are there any questions for staff?
Hi, Clint. So when I was reading this, I was looking and I saw that, Plan Commission voted to support, but staff recommended against. And I kind of wanted you to go through what staff's hesitation was in approving this as it was in its original state, and the reason why, well, in its original state, period, and then we'll go forward.
Yes, ma'am. Staff's main concern is when we look at alley abandonments, we like to either abandon the whole portion of the alley so you don't have a dead end for numerous reasons, but one being that you create a dead end for access, but it also causes confusion on who's responsible for maintaining that area when you have part of it being private and part of it being public. And then, it could potentially create, some liability issues and safety issues with not knowing, what's public and what's private.
Thank you. I agree. I mean, I know that, the property owners have gone through a great deal to communicate with the people it directly impacts, the abandonment of the alley, but the partial abandonment is what I can't, get with. I think, we do, want to, when there are opportunities to abandon alleys, I think, we should do it if everybody is for it. But that partial piece is what I can't really get with, because I think it'll create confusion. I think it has the potential to set a precedent for some things that we don't want to do going forward. So for that reason, I'm not going to be supporting this abandonment.
Any
so just to
questions?
clarify,
No, please.
Clint, is what we're voting on, is this the partial or is this the full abandonment?
So you have the ability to approve the full abandonment, and we actually have two draft ordinances in your packet. One for the full abandonment, which actually does have an additional condition that would include, providing an ingress-egress access easement along that area that the Plan Commission did not recommend, that would provide that one property owner access to the property while still abandoning the full alley. And then the other option is the ordinance that's drafted with the Plan Commission recommendation that I read into record.
Just as another, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask.
Just as another procedural question, do we need to have 5 council members? Do we need a supermajority in order to go over the Plan Commission's recommendation in this case?
Not in this case, because this is an abandonment. The supermajority requirement is only involves a zoning change request.
Okay, thank you.
I see Jennifer's head nodding, so I think that's right.
Any other questions? All right, we will now open the public hearing for comments, and we have 4 registered speakers tonight. The first one I have down is Stephen Sloan is the speaker on the line.
Yes, give him just a moment to get transferred over to speaker.
Great.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Sloan. We can hear you.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I appreciate the chance to work with the Planning Commission. We've been working on this for a few months now to bring this to council, so I appreciate the opportunity to vote on it. We've gone through several kind of compromise arrangements to try to satisfy the one property owner that's opposed to the abandonment. We've got 13 signatures from neighbors in the neighborhood that think it's a good idea, that have signed off on it. We have one who's opposed, who has some rental property in that area. The commission's worked hard to come up with some compromise agreements that would address some of the issues that were placed in opposition by the opposing property owner. We're seeking to, us and the co-applicants that are also on the line here, are seeking to build 2 residences in that area. The alleyways are no man's land in that area. You can't even drive down that alley. It's overgrown on both sides. There's actually a sewer clean out in the middle of the alley, so it's not even drivable. And so that leads to all sorts of dumping and ingress and egress by people up behind residents' homes. Like I said, the residents that I've talked to on this are uniform in their opinion that abandonment is a good idea. If the property owner who has investment property in that area, it doesn't make as much sense for him to gain more property. But for the residents, they like the idea of the alleyways being secured, and they're having to maintain the alleyways now. If there's any maintenance going on the alleyway, it's up to the residents to do it. So I think this is what's best for that neighborhood. If you allow residents to develop this property instead of keeping it as kind of this in-between sort of status that it has right now. As I said, the residents are behind it. We even had the president of the neighborhood association down to look at the project, and she was supportive of it. She signed off on it as well. And so we've done due diligence in working with the Planning Commission to go forward with this is what's best for the neighborhood. And so it's our hope that the council will agree on this and help us move it forward.
Mr. Sloan, I have a brief question. There's one neighbor who is within the city block where the application for the abandonment is. Is that someone who resides on that property, or is that someone who rents that property out to tenants?
He's got a long-term tenant of about, I think, 9 or 10 years that's in that property. He does not reside in the neighborhood. And so I actually talked to the tenant without knowing he wasn't the property owner, and he was excited about the abandonment, but I understand he doesn't own the property.
Wait, I wanted to clarify. The party that is not in favor of the abandonment does not live in the neighborhood?
It does not.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sloan. We appreciate your time tonight. The next registered speaker is Anne. I'm going to mispronounce this name potentially. Theroux.
Right.
Thank you for being here. You may proceed.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me. It's Anne Theroux. It's a very complicated last name. I live at 706 Tyler, so just across the street from the area that is seeking this abandonment. My backyard backs up to 2 houses, both of which I believe are rentals. And my challenge with the alleyway abandonment came when the weeds started growing up on the other side of my fence. And so the gentleman who mows my lawn said, I've seen a snake in there. We really need to get that cleaned out. And I said, oh, great. I'm responsible for everything on this half of it. Just go ahead and do it. And he said, I'd really rather talk with the man whose house is behind yours. And I said, okay, well, this is the way it works. But if you want to do that. So he did. And the gentleman that lives behind me was definitely not in favor of me mowing the weeds on my half of the length of the abandoned alleyway. And so that created a bit of discord, unfortunately, and tension between me and this other neighbor who, again, is a renter. So, I think he just didn't understand the rule. And so I ultimately went over there and had a conversation with him, which, went fine. I explained the situation, and he backed down on his request that I not mow the weeds on the backside of my fence line. But my point being that this kind of situation where it's unclear whose responsibility it is to care for that alleyway just creates potential for discord. And so if Mr. Sloan is able to take that over, that would certainly eliminate one opportunity for some hard feelings between neighbors, which is just something we don't want to have happen.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have Travis Young. Travis, are you on the line? Okay, we will move to Chris Jones. Chris, are you on the line?
He is. Give him just a minute.
Okay.
Hey, this is Chris Jones. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I had written in comments and sent them earlier today, and I'm looking for those so I can read them to you because I'm definitely more elegant in the written word than speaking off the cuff. So please give me about 10 seconds to find that out. Okay. My name is Chris Jones, and along with my wife, Rebecca Falk Jones, we own the property across Sherman Street from Block 17 of Rennick's Edition. I am in support of the alley abandonment on this block for both practical and communal enhancement. On the practical level, this alley provides a convenient dumping ground for trash. For anyone in McLennan County who doesn't want to haul large pieces of refuse to the landfill and pay a fee, it is easy to drive through any of these unsupervised alleys late at night and offload a mattress, a broken toilet, broken toys, useless tires, etc., all of which I have removed from the alley on our block or seen in the alley in discussion for this hearing. The alley also provides an unlit area in which a variety of unsavory activities can flourish. Our alley has been used as a hideout for stolen possessions, a shelter for drug abuse, and a meeting place for amorous rendezvous. On the communal level, the alley bisects the block and separates neighbors and replaces the opportunity of backyard to backyard connection with a blighted physical boundary. In this particular block, there are 5 vacant lots, by my count, looking at MCAD today, and maybe different, but around 5. 5 vacant lots on both sides of the alley, which will be developed eventually into new homesteads adjacent to and across from longstanding East Waco residents. Why maintain the separation when there is a possibility of encouraging connectivity among the neighbors, old and new? Abandoning the alley is a simple step that can be taken by the city of Waco to contribute to the achievement of objectives 2.02 and 2.17 under Goal 2 Growth Management on pages 2 and 3 of the Waco 2040 Comprehensive Plan. These goals seek to reinforce the neighborhood concept in both the sociological and physical sense, and to develop strategies to arrest and reverse deterioration within transitional neighborhoods. Give the residents of Rennick Block 17 the opportunity to own and beautify the space by approving this alley abandonment, and watch the benefits extend beyond property maintenance and into neighborly connection.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is Travis Young on the line?
Yeah. Give us just a minute to unmute him, sir.
Sure.
Oh. Well, I'm trying. You were 3 before.
He was on the line. He is on the line, Esmeralda.
He is on the line, but he doesn't seem to be able to unmute his phone on his end. Julie, are you able to unmute it?
No, I'm asking, but it's up. He's gonna unmute it.
Yeah. I will get with Mr. Young to get his comments to the council, or let me call him actually.
While we're waiting, is this an appropriate time for me to ask a question while we're waiting on him?
Yeah, we can go to, continue discussion. That's right, Jennifer, can't we?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
She proceeds cautiously. Yeah, with great trepidation. So am I to understand from Mr. Jones's comment, I believe, or no, the speaker before Mr. Jones, that and I think I may have read that in one of the documents that Mr. Sloan is working with the other property owners to as a group, as a neighborhood, to keep it clean. And with the abandonment, the responsibilities of maintenance and its cleanliness then fall to the individual owners because it's theirs. Is that yes?
That is correct. It would become private property.
Okay.
But is it fair to say, question for staff, and not to interrupt Councilmember Bearfield, but point of clarification to her question, it's always been the owner's responsibility to maintain it, correct?
That's correct. For the alley behind their property, general maintenance of keeping it clean is the responsibility of the owner, especially in this case, since there's not a physical alley there.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. I think Travis is on the call now.
He is. He's on my phone. Let's see if you can hear him through this technology.
Give it a shot, Mr. Young.
I'm pretty good at being loud, is what I'm told. So I hope that everybody can hear me. So I own a property on the block and have plans to build, and honestly just at a loss for any reason to not abandon the alleyway. If the only thing that changes is that the people responsible for maintaining it, mowing it, keeping it clear, also have access to build on it, and to utilize that property that really isn't being utilized as an alleyway for, people to drive through anyways. I can't think of a logical reason to not abandon it and not open it up for access for development for people that actually want to utilize that space. It is not being maintained, is not being mowed and cleared, and if that's going to be our responsibility, I'd rather have a fence that backed up a little bit further and allowed for a little bit as far as the building codes go, for utilization of my property to make that a little bit better of a space. So again, I just can't wrap my mind around a reason not to, and in full support of discarding the whole alleyway. So that is my 2 cents, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. We'll now close the public hearing. Is there a motion on this item?
I move to approve the abandonment based on staff's original recommendation, which was abandon the entire alley while giving an easement to the one property owner that claimed they didn't have access. Mr. Peters, does that fairly state what staff's original recommendation was?
That's correct, and it's that would be the ordinance draft on packet page 82 and through 84.
And so with all the conditions and findings of that original recommendation.
I'll second.
Motion a second. Any discussion?
I just had one question. The easement part, if it's being abandoned to him anyway, what was the nature of the easement?
So the easement will give that property that's adjacent, or the lot A6 and C7. If we abandon it without the easement, he would only have access to 10 feet. So this would give him access to the full 20 feet to be able to access his property.
But don't we want I was thinking we wanted lot 4 and lot 5, as I'm looking at the map, for those guys to get the 10 feet.
They would get the 10 feet. There would just be an easement over it for access. So there is also the option to not have the ingress egress easement and just let everybody get their 10 feet and have the easement for the utilities, but not have the ingress egress easement.
Just abandon the entire thing.
But Clint, was the property owner who would be giving up the easement to the opponent? Were they okay with the easement? Yes,
the only property owner that we got negative feedback on the option that was in staff recommendation was the property owner that was opposed to the abandonment.
I think if that seems conciliatory to me, that to preserve the long-term tenant's access to his property from the back. So I think that's fine for me.
Yeah, I think it's key that we just didn't want to have any, dead ends or disruptive, set disruptive policy that could again domino and turn into something that we didn't want. So full abandonment is, I think, better in the way we should be moving forward.
So,
Absolutely. And go for it, Holmes.
No, just wanted. So, Andre, you're saying the full abandonment without even the lease element, which is kind of where I'm thinking. But go ahead, Kelly.
Oh no, Andre, you can go. You can respond. Okay, I was just gonna say I appreciate the arguments made by the neighbors are really compelling, and I think for us to be holding intention lots of different priorities, but to ultimately defer to the folks that are actually living in the neighborhood feels like we're moving in an appropriate direction.
So the question is with the, just to make sure that we're clear, the motion that Councilmember Wateroo said was, it's the abandonment, but with the 20-foot ingress egress. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. The 20-foot ingress egress easement be retained on the portion of alley adjacent to that lot, A6 and C7 of Block 17, which is that corner property.
And my last question for staff is the property giving, not the property benefiting from that easement, but the property owner that would be surrendering that 10 feet for that. And surrendering is not the right word either, Jennifer. I don't know what the legal term is. I should, but the one that is giving that easement for that 10 feet, they're okay with that easement existing, correct? Both parties where that easement exists, or sorry, the one that is giving that the easement is okay with that. Is that?
So we have not specifically talked to that property owner about the easement, but they have their property fenced off and are not using that alleyway, and they did not give any opposition to the request with that original condition on there when staff had that at the first meeting.
And we're probably informed of even the planning commission's vote, which would have been to maintain the alley as is after planning commission, and they would have been informed of that and had an opportunity to speak into it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
But my recollection was that in the little map this afternoon and the stars and all that stuff, that person was in favor of abandonment.
That's correct.
With, I would assume, full knowledge that he would get 10 feet and that this lease thing sort of is, impinging on his 10 feet of what should be his in a full abandonment.
What we can do, we can reach out and specifically talk to him about that issue between first reading and second reading. If that's what council would like us to do, we can definitely make that attempt. Just to verify that's okay with them.
Sure.
I'm thinking towards just full abandonment without the least goofiness on the end. He'll still have 10 feet to do whatever he wants to get in and out. Plus, his house fronts Preston Street, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's not like he can't get to his front door or anything. Okay. So I will be voting against Josh's motion and probably following that up with another one if it doesn't pass.
Well, I'm willing to, Mayor, if you're willing to poll the council before we vote, or just hear from the council before we vote, just to save time. I don't know where others stand. I'm willing to amend if that's willing to go through. But to me, this seems to accommodate the ingress egress. But
Mayor, there's a motion and a second, I believe, on the floor.
Yep.
And so
That's great, Josh. We'll just pull the council. Esmeralda, would you just pull the council, please?
Sure. Holmes,
No.
Palmer,
Yes.
Porterud,
yes.
Bearfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries. And we'll now move to public hearing 2020-884, I believe. Yeah, that's right.
Yes, sir. Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Susan Wiseman and Monty Suffren for a short-term rental type 2 in R1B zoning district on property described as Lot 4, Block 3 of the Oak Forest Park Edition, known as 3825 North 30th Street. By a vote of 9-1, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the following findings. 1, the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan. 2, the proposed use is compatible with the appropriate and orderly development of the area in which it's located. 3, that the proposed use will not be more objectionable to neighboring properties because of traffic congestion, noise, fumes, vibrations, or any other characteristics than any use permitted in the zoning district without the grant of the special exception. And 4, that available community facilities and services, including the road system providing access to the proposed use, are adequate for the proposed use.
Thank you, Clint. Are there any questions for staff?
Can I have clarification as to whose district this is?
Ooh, it's a race to figure it out.
I think it's 5. I think it's 5.
Yeah. Any other questions for staff? We will now open a public hearing for comments. We have one registered speaker, and that is Susan Wiseman is the speaker on the line.
she is, and we are unmuting her now.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Wiseman. We can hear you.
Good. I'm basically just wanted to register to speak in case there are any questions that need to be addressed. We have spoken to all of the neighbours who would have received postcards about this, except for one who purchased in Park Lake Drive, so around the corner from us. And I think they purchased in August, and we haven't had an opportunity to actually meet or speak with them. I've tried on several occasions. But all of the others that we've spoken to have said they're actually quite strongly in support of the idea. They know that we've had tenants in there for a few years, and usually there's sort of new tenants each year. And a couple of them have said the idea of a sort of a nicely managed little bed and breakfast, or not bed and breakfast, short-term rental is what we're thinking of, you know, would add to the area, they think, and they would like that. You can see, I think, if you have the packet of the review, then you can see that the only house that's really close to this one is right next door, and that's the one that we live in. So we'll be able to hear if there's any noise or any problems there. And the other houses round about are really quite a considerable distance away. The nearest one to the south is, from the two houses themselves, are over 130 feet apart, and there's dense trees and a creek in between. And they've said they're on site anyway, they're supportive. So everyone we've spoken to thinks it will be good. We're on site to address anything should it arise. We've already worked out with a realtor about a good contract with any guests coming, so that they will sign that they will not be holding any parties there. They won't be able to have additional cars, additional guests, you know, maybe just one guest per person or something like that, but not a party. So, and this realtor will assist us with managing, and he's actually listening into the meeting too. And he has several years of experience in managing short-term rentals. And so we really don't envisage any problems with that at all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wiseman. Are there any other individuals registered to speak?
No, sir, not on this item.
We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just had one question of staff that I'm sorry I didn't unmute in time. There was no opposition that was within 200 foot or 20%, or that broke that trigger, supermajority trigger, Clint?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Please pull the council. Oh, is there any more discussion?
No, I just did want to go on record to say I appreciate the fact that as we are working to what our STR plan is, though Dr. Weissman doesn't live in this house, she is an active part in the community as its neighbor. And so, it is still affecting her neighborhood that she has a connection to. And I think that's one of the things that needs to be important, because I know, I'm not begrudging anybody who wants to make, additional monies and doing things with, buying houses and making them STRs, but it does make it easier for the people who live in the community to have somebody that's connected to the community manage a short-term rental. So I just wanted to go on record for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Bearfield. Any more discussion? Please pull the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Porterwood.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes.
Motion passes.
That motion carries. We'll now move on to public hearing 2020-885.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and City Council. This is a public hearing to receive comments on the 2019-2020 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The city is required to complete and send to HUD on an annual basis a CAPER which describes the activities undertaken during the program year using federal funds granted to the city of Waco by HUD. This year's CAPER covers the period of October 1, 2019 to September 30th, 2020. A draft CAPER was put out for public comment on December 3rd, 2020, and will remain out for public comment for 15 days. Notice was posted in the Waco Tribune Herald on December 2nd, 2020. Copies are provided in the Community Services Department in City Hall, City Secretary's office, and in all 4 libraries for review by the public. In addition, a copy is available on the city's website on the Community Services Department page. No comments were received as of this public hearing. No formal action is required by the council other than holding this public hearing.
Thank you, Renisha. Are there any questions for staff? We will now open a public hearing for comments. Are there any registered speakers?
No, sir, there are no registered speakers.
We will close the public hearing, and as mentioned there's no council action on this item. So we will next move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of resolutions 220-886 through 2020-886 through 2020-898. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Yes, sir. Holmes.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Porterwood.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes. The consent agenda passes. We will now move to ordinance 2020-899, and Councilmember Borderwood, Palmer, and I have filed affidavits of interest on this item.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, amending Article 9 Municipal Settings Designation and Chapter 26 Utilities to add a new Division 3 to prohibit the use of groundwater in designated areas generally described as all property and reinvestment zone for tax increment financing, TIF, numbers 1, 2, and 3, and 2 groups of properties in East Waco that adjoin TIF 1. Renumbering or relettering certain provisions as necessary, providing for a penalty, providing for an effective date, repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a savings clause, providing for inclusion in the code, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 3-0 council vote on first reading on December 1st, 2020.
Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, that ordinance passes. We will now move to Last part of the meeting, are there any council member reports, committees, boards, commission liaison visits?
I just want to acknowledge and recognize our Waco Youth Council for their continued support for the CPS children. They have collected and gathered gifts again in their annual holiday gift giving drive to give back. And they continue to set a precedent for young people in our community. And I'm just exceptionally proud of them and wanted to highlight them in these efforts in this giving season.
Good work. And thank you, Councilmember Bearfield, for serving as the liaison for that board. Any other reports? If not, then we will adjourn at 6:57 p.m. Have a good evening, everybody.